She was 17 years old and loved a 70-year-old rich man. But when she got pregnant, the family was shocked. 17-year-old Zuri had learned how to disappear, not by magic, but by practice. You learn fast when no one's looking for you. She had lived in 7 different foster homes by the time she was 15. Each one promised stability, structure, and love. Most offered rules, chores, and cold stares. The last one accused her of stealing a phone she never touched. She had pleaded, cried, but no one listened. That night, she stuffed her few belongings into a plastic bag and vanished before sunrise. That was 11 months ago. Since then, Zuri had become a shadow in the city. She knew which fast food bathrooms stayed unlocked, which convenience stores were generous with old sandwiches, and how to sleep in public without being noticed. Her favorite spot was behind an old restaurant, where the warm exhaust vents from the kitchen kept the pavement from freezing. She wrapped herself in an old coat she found in a donation bin. Her shoes were 2 sizes too big. She hadn't looked in a mirror in weeks, but she imagined her face was dull, tired, and older than her years. Every morning was the same. Search for food, avoid trouble, stay invisible. People passed her like smoke, some indifferent, others curious and unkind. Once a man offered her a ride. She ran. Another time a couple gave her a bag of chips and a Bible verse written on a napkin. She didn't know which part stung more, the pity or the scripture. One bitter November evening, after 2 full days without food, she stumbled into the lobby of a fine restaurant just to get warm. The marble floor gleamed under golden lights. The jazz was soft and clean, like something from a life she didn't belong to. A young hostess looked up sharply. "Miss, I'm sorry. You can't be in here." Zuri turned to leave. Her pride wouldn't let her beg. Then came a voice, calm, clear, old. "She's with me." The man was white, tall, and clearly in his 70s. He wore a long navy wool coat and a gray fedora. His name was Walter Grayson, though she didn't know it yet. The hostess looked unsure. "Sir, she's with me," he repeated. Walter led Zuri to a small table near the back, away from curious eyes. He didn't push conversation. "I can order you something," he offered, "or you can just sit a while." She nodded, unsure if it was real. He brought her soup, bread, tea. She devoured them all without speaking a word. When she stood to leave, he slipped her a business card. "I run this place," he said. "If you're hungry again, come to the back door. Ask for Walter." She didn't believe him, but hunger has a way of bending pride. 2 days later, she returned card in hand. Walter answered himself, handed her a sandwich, and said nothing else. That became a rhythm, a routine. Once, then twice, then nearly every day. Some days she sat and listened to him ramble about old kitchen stories. Other days she barely nodded. But Walter never asked her to explain herself. Then came the morning she didn't show. He waited. 1 day, 2, on the 3rd, he asked a line cook to keep an eye out. On the 4th, he searched the alley himself. He found her behind the dumpster, curled like a leaf, skin burning with fever. He didn't hesitate. He lifted her into his car and drove her home. The house was modest, but full of warmth. Faded curtains, stacks of old books, a kettle always warming on the stove. He laid her in the guest room, tucked an extra quilt around her, and called a doctor he trusted. When Zuri awoke, the first thing she noticed was the ceiling. A soft beige with an old-fashioned light fixture. She sat up too quickly, dizzy and confused. "Take it slow," Walter said from the doorway. You've been out for 2 days." She narrowed her eyes. "Why did you bring me here?" "Because you needed help," he said simply. "People don't do that." "I'm not people," he replied. She didn't trust him, not yet, but she stayed. One morning, she wandered into the kitchen and found a framed photo on the windowsill, a woman in an apron, laughing as Walter kissed her cheek. "My wife," he said quietly. "She passed 5 years ago." Zura stayed longer than she meant to. A week turned to 2. She began leaving notes on the fridge, grocery lists, silly questions, lyrics she liked. He wrote back with dad jokes and crossword clues. He taught her to make pasta from scratch. She reorganized his spice rack. He called her Kiddo. She called him Walt. And then one rainy morning he handed her a cup of tea and said, "I've been thinking about something more permanent." Zuri raised a brow. "I'd like to adopt you," he said. "If you're okay with that." She laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was unthinkable. "No one's ever asked to keep me before," she whispered. "I'm not trying to keep you," Walter said. "I'm trying to give you a home." She said yes. The paperwork was filed, signatures signed, a judge approved the adoption, and for the first time, Zuri had a place that didn't feel borrowed. A week later, Walter handed her a backpack and a manila envelope. "What's this?" she asked. "Enrollment forms," he said. "You're going back to school." Zuri opened the envelope and saw her name typed neatly in bold letters at the top of a school registration form. Beneath it, grade 11. Her eyes welled up. She didn't say thank you. She just walked over and hugged him. And for Walla, that was enough. By the time Zuri turned 18, her world had changed more than she thought possible. She had straight A's for the first time in her life. She baked lasagna with Walter every Sunday. She had a room filled with books, plants, and light. For the first time, she felt seen, not as a problem, but as someone worth investing in. Walter never asked about her past unless she wanted to share. He simply built a life around her presence, piece by piece. But life doesn't wait for everything to be perfect. The first signs were subtle. Morning nausea, headaches, an ache in her back. Zuri blamed stress. But after a missed period and the 2 pink lines on a pharmacy test, she sat frozen on the edge of the bathtub, stomach hollow, the world spinning. Walter was downstairs humming while he chopped vegetables. Zuri took a deep breath, walked down slowly, and placed the test on the counter. Walter looked at it, then at her. He didn't flinch, didn't raise his voice. "I didn't mean for this to happen," she said, voice cracking. "I'm so sorry." He stepped closer, opened his arms, and she fell into them, tears soaking through his shirt. "You're still my girl," he whispered. "No mistake changes that." Zuri expected shame, maybe distance, but Walter never made her feel small. Instead, he sat beside her that night and listened. "His name was Elijah," she said. "We sat next to each other in English. He listened to me. Really listened. He didn't take advantage. I just wanted to feel loved." Walter nodded. "And now you're bringing another life into the world? That takes courage." She shook her head. "It feels like I failed you." He smiled gently. "You didn't fail. You grew. You stumbled. And now you stand again. That's strength." But the outside world wasn't so kind. When Walter's family found out, they assumed the worst. "You've lost your mind." His niece Claire snapped during a phone call. "She's a teenager, and now she's pregnant." "What will people think?" Walter stood by the window, watching Zuri water the flowers he'd planted with his late wife years ago. "They'll think whatever they want," he replied, "but I know what I see. A girl trying her best, carrying more weight than anyone her age should, and still choosing life." "You're being naive," Claire said. "No," he said softly. "I'm being a father." The whispers spread at the grocery store, at church. One neighbor even muttered, "Shameful," under her breath as Zuri walked by. Zuri felt it all, the stares, the silence, the judgment. One evening, she broke down at the dinner table. "Maybe I should leave," she said. "Maybe I've embarrassed you enough." Walter put down his fork. "You listen to me," he said, voice firm. "You're not a burden. You're my daughter, and that child, that's my grandbaby. We don't run from storms. We build stronger roofs." She cried for a long time that night, but not from fear, from relief. Months passed. Her belly grew. Walter painted the nursery yellow, saying it was a color of hope. He spent nights reading parenting books, glasses sliding down his nose. Zuri watched him from the hallway, heart swelling. One day, a letter came from Elijah. He'd moved across the country with his family and only just learned she was pregnant. "I'm sorry," he wrote. "I was too young to handle it right. But I hope our child is raised in love." Zuri folded the letter and placed it in a box of keepsakes. The baby shower was small but joyful. Miss Patty from the bakery brought cupcakes. One of Zuri's teachers gifted baby books, and Walter, he stood in the corner smiling like a man who had waited his whole life for this kind of chaos. Labor came in the early morning. Walter drove her to the hospital, his hand never leaving hers in the back seat. Hours later, a nurse emerged, holding a swaddled baby girl. "Are you the grandfather?" she asked. Walter's throat tightened. "Yes, I am." He took the baby gently. She had a head full of dark curls and a tiny wrinkle between her brows, just like Zuri. Zuri, exhausted but radiant, looked at him from the hospital bed. "Her name's Hope." Walter stared at the infant in his arms. "She's perfect." That night, he sat between Zuri and the bassinet, watching them sleep. The hospital room was dim, the only sound a soft heartbeat monitor, and the occasional sigh from the newborn. He thought of his late wife, of the life he had once built and lost, of the girl who'd collapsed behind his restaurant, and now of the legacy he'd never expected, but wouldn't trade for anything. Zuri wasn't his by blood. Hope wasn't either, but love had made them family. And in the quiet of that hospital room, Walter finally understood. Sometimes the greatest chapters of life begin when no one's looking, when you open your door to a stranger and end up finding your heart. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button for more emotional, dramatic, and unexpected tales. And let us know in the comments, where in the world are you watching from? We love hearing from all of you. Until next time, stay kind, stay curious, and keep watching.